The human eye and the colorful world. Introduction. You have studied in the previous chapter about refraction of light by lenses. You also studied the nature, position and relative size of images formed by lenses. How can these ideas help us in the study of the human eye? The human eye uses light and enables us to see objects around us. It has a lens in its structure. What is the function of the lens in a human eye? How do the lenses used in spectacles correct defects of vision? Let us consider these questions in this chapter. We have learnt in the previous chapter about light and some of its properties. Now we shall use these ideas to study some of the optical phenomena in nature. We shall also discuss about rainbow formation, splitting of white light, and blue color of the sky. The human eye. The human eye is one of the most valuable and sensitive sense organs. The human eye is like a camera. Its lens system forms an image on a light-sensitive screen called the retina. Light enters the eye through a thin membrane called the cornea. It forms the transparent bulge on the front surface of the eyeball. The eyeball is approximately spherical in shape with a diameter of about 2.3 centimeters. Most of the refraction for the light rays entering the eye occurs at the outer surface of the cornea. The crystalline lens merely provides the finer adjustment of focal length required to focus objects at different distances on the retina. We find a structure called iris behind the cornea. Iris is a dark muscular diaphragm that controls the size of the pupil. The pupil regulates and controls the amount of light entering the eye. The eye lens forms an inverted real image of the object on the retina. The retina is a delicate membrane having an enormous number of light-sensitive cells. The light-sensitive cells get activated upon illumination and generate electrical signals. These signals are sent to the brain via the optic nerves. The brain interprets these signals and finally processes the information so that we perceive objects as they are. Damage to or malfunction of any part of the visual system can lead to significant loss to visual functioning. For example, if any of the structures involved in the transmission of light, like the cornea, pupil, eye lens, aqueous humor, and vitreous humor, or those responsible for conversion of light to electrical impulse like the retina, or even the optic nerve that transmits these impulses to the brain is damaged, it will result in visual impairment. You might have experienced that you are not able to see objects clearly for some time when you enter from bright light to a room with dim light. After some time, however, you may be able to see things in the dim light room. The pupil of an eye acts like a variable aperture whose size can be varied with the help of the iris. When the light is very bright, the iris contracts the pupil to allow less light to enter the eye. However, in dim light, the iris expands the pupil to allow more light to enter the eye. Thus, the pupil opens completely through the relaxation of the iris. Power of accommodation. The eye lens is composed of a fibrous, jelly-like material. Its curvature can be modified to some extent by the ciliary muscles. The change in the curvature of the eye lens can thus change its focal length. When the muscles are relaxed, the lens becomes thin. Thus, its focal length increases. This enables us to see distant objects clearly. When you are looking at objects closer to the eye, the ciliary muscles contract. This increases the curvature of the eye lens. the eye lens becomes thicker and hence the focal length of the eye lens decreases. This enables us to see nearby objects clearly. The ability of the eye lens to adjust its focal length is called accommodation. However, the focal length of the eye lens cannot be decreased below a certain minimum limit. Try to read a printed page by holding it very close to your eyes. You may see the image being blurred or feel strain in the eye. To see an object comfortably and distinctly, you must hold it at about 25 centimeters from the eyes. The minimum distance at which objects can be seen most distinctly without strain is called the least distance of distinct vision. It is also called the near point of the eye. For a young adult with normal vision, the near point is about 25 centimeters. The farthest point up to which the eye can see objects clearly is called the far point of the eye. It is infinity for a normal eye. You may note here a normal eye can see objects clearly that are between 25 centimeters and infinity. Sometimes the crystalline lens of people at old age becomes milky and cloudy. This condition is called cataract. This causes partial or complete loss of vision. It is possible to restore vision through a cataract surgery. Why do we have two eyes for vision and not just one? There are several advantages of our having two eyes instead of one. It gives a wider field of view. A human being has a horizontal field of view of about 150 degrees with one eye and of about 180 degrees with two eyes. The ability to detect faint object is of course enhanced with two detectors instead of one. Our two eyes are positioned on the front of our heads and it thus reduces our field of view in favor of what is called stereopsis. Because our eyes are separated by a few centimeters, each eye sees a slightly different image. Our brain combines the two images into one using the extra information to tell us how close or far away things are. Defects of vision and their correction. Sometimes the eye may gradually lose its power of accommodation. In such conditions, the person cannot see the objects distinctly and comfortably. The vision becomes blurred due to the refractive defects of the eye. There are mainly three common refractive defects of vision. These are myopia or nearsightedness, hypermetropia or farsightedness, and presbyopia. These defects can be corrected by the use of suitable spherical lenses. We discuss below these defects and their correction. Myopia. Myopia is also known as nearsightedness. A person with myopia can see nearby objects clearly but cannot see distant objects distinctly. A person with this defect has the far point nearer than infinity. Such a person may see clearly up to a distance of a few meters. In a myopic eye, the image of a distant object is formed in front of the retina and not at the retina itself. This defect may arise due to 1. Excessive curvature of the eye lens, or 2. Elongation of the eyeball. This defect can be corrected by using a concave lens of suitable power. A concave lens of suitable power will bring the image back onto the retina and thus the defect is corrected. Hypermetropia. Hypermetropia is also known as farsightedness. A person with hypermetropia can see distant objects clearly but cannot see nearby objects distinctly. The near point for the person is farther away from the normal near point, that is 25 centimeters. Such a person has to keep a reading material much beyond 25 centimeters from the eye for comfortable reading. This is because the light rays from a close-by object are focused at a point behind the retina. This defect arises either because 1. The focal length of the eye lens is too long, or 2. The eyeball has become too small. This defect can be corrected by using a convex lens of appropriate power. Eyeglasses with converging lenses provide the additional focusing power required for forming the image on the retina. Presbyopia. The power of accommodation of the eye usually decreases with aging. For most people, the near point gradually recedes away. They find it difficult to see nearby objects comfortably and distinctly without corrective eyeglasses. This defect is called presbyopia. It arises due to the gradual weakening of the ciliary muscles and diminishing flexibility of the eye lens. Sometimes a person may suffer from both myopia and hypermetropia. Such people often require bifocal lenses. A common type of bifocal lenses consists of both concave and convex lenses. The upper portion consists of a concave lens. It facilitates distant vision. The lower part is a convex lens, which facilitates near vision. These days, it is possible to correct the refractive defects with contact lenses or through surgical interventions. Refraction of light through a prism. You have learnt how light gets refracted through a rectangular glass slab. For parallel refracting surfaces, as in a glass slab, the emergent ray is parallel to the incident ray. However, it is slightly displaced laterally. How would light get refracted through a transparent prism? Consider a triangular glass prism. It has 2 triangular bases and 3 rectangular lateral surfaces. These surfaces are inclined to each other. The angle between its 2 lateral faces is called the angle of the prism. Let us now do an activity to study the refraction of light through a triangular glass prism. Fix a sheet of white paper on a drawing board using drawing pins. Place a glass prism on it in such a way that it rests on its triangular base. Trace the outline of the prism using a pencil. Draw a straight line PE inclined to one of the refracting surfaces, say EB, of the prism. Fix 2 pins, say at points P and Q, on the line PE. Look for the images of the pins fixed at P and Q through the other face AC. Fix 2 more pins at points R and S such that the pins at R and S and the images of the pins at P and Q lie on the same straight line. Remove the pins and the glass prism. The line PE meets the boundary of the prism at point E. Similarly, join and produce the points R and S. Let these lines meet the boundary of the prism at E and F, respectively. Join E and F. Draw perpendiculars to the refracting surfaces A, B and AC of the prism at points E and F, respectively. Mark the angle of incidence, the angle of refraction, and the angle of emergence. Here, PE is the incident ray, EF is the refracted ray, and FS is the emergent ray. You may note that a ray of light is entering from air to glass at the first surface AB. The light ray on refraction has bent towards the normal. At the second surface, AC, the light ray has entered from glass to air. Hence, it has bent away from normal. Compare the angle of incidence and the angle of refraction at each refracting surface of the prism. Is this similar to the kind of bending that occurs in a glass slab? The peculiar shape of the prism makes the emergent ray bend at an angle to the direction of the incident ray. This angle is called the angle of deviation. In this case, angle D is the angle of deviation. Mark the angle of deviation in the above activity and measure it. Dispersion of white light by a glass prism. Take a thick sheet of cardboard and make a small hole or narrow slit in its middle. Allow sunlight to fall on the narrow slit. This gives a narrow beam of white light. Now, take a glass prism and allow the light from the slit to fall on one of its faces. Turn the prism slowly until the light that comes out of it appears on a nearby screen. What do you observe? You will find a beautiful band of colors. Why does this happen? The prism has probably split the incident white light into a band of colors. Note the colors that appear at the two ends of the color band. What is the sequence of colors that you see on the screen? The various colors seen are violet, indigo, blue, green, yellow, orange, and red. The acronym VIBGYOR will help you to remember the sequence of colors. The band of the colored components of a light beam is called its spectrum. You might not be able to see all the colors separately, yet something makes each color distinct from the other. The splitting of light into its component colors is called dispersion. A rainbow is a natural spectrum appearing in the sky after a rain. It is caused by dispersion of sunlight by tiny water droplets present in the atmosphere. A rainbow is always formed in a direction opposite to that of the sun. The water droplets act like small prisms. They refract and disperse the incident sunlight, then reflect it internally, and finally refract it again when it comes out of the raindrop. Due to the dispersion of light and internal reflection, different colors reach the observer's eye. You can also see a rainbow on a sunny day when you look at the sky through a waterfall or through a water fountain with the sun behind you. Atmospheric refraction. You might have observed the apparent random wavering or flickering of objects seen through a turbulent stream of hot air rising above a fire or a radiator. The air just above the fire becomes hotter than the air further up. The hotter air is lighter than the cooler air above it and has a refractive index slightly less than that of the cooler air. Since the physical conditions of the refracting medium are not stationary, the apparent position of the object as seen through the hot air fluctuates. This wavering is thus an effect of atmospheric refraction on a small scale in our local environment. The twinkling of stars is a similar phenomenon on a much larger scale. Let us see how we can explain it. Twinkling of stars. The twinkling of a star is due to atmospheric refraction of starlight. The starlight, on entering the Earth's atmosphere, undergoes refraction continuously before it reaches the Earth. The atmospheric refraction occurs in a medium of gradually changing refractive index. Since the atmosphere bends starlight towards the normal, the apparent position of the star is slightly different from its actual position. The star appears slightly higher than its actual position when viewed near the horizon. Further, this apparent position of the star is not stationary but keeps on changing slightly, since the physical conditions of the Earth's atmosphere are not stationary, as was the case in the previous paragraph. Since the stars are very distant, they are approximate point-sized sources of light. As the path of rays of light coming from the star goes on varying slightly, the apparent position of the star fluctuates and the amount of starlight entering the eye flickers. The star sometimes appears brighter and at some other time fainter, which is the twinkling effect. Why don't the planets twinkle? The planets are much closer to the Earth and are thus seen as extended sources. If we consider a planet as a collection of a large number of point-sized sources of light, the total variation in the amount of light entering our eye from all the individual point-sized sources will average out to zero, thereby nullifying the twinkling effect. Advanced sunrise and delayed sunset. The sun is visible to us about 2 minutes before the actual sunrise and about 2 minutes after the actual sunset because of atmospheric refraction. By actual sunrise, we mean the actual crossing of the horizon by the sun, the actual and apparent position of the sun with respect to the horizon. The time difference between actual sunset and the apparent sunset is about 2 minutes. The apparent flattening of the sun's disk at sunrise and sunset is also due to the same phenomenon. Scattering of light. The interplay of light with objects around us gives rise to several spectacular phenomena in nature. The blue color of the sky, color of water in deep sea, the reddening of the sun at sunrise, and the sunset are some of the wonderful phenomena we are familiar with. In the previous classes, you have learned about the scattering of light by colloidal particles. The path of a beam of light passing through a true solution is not visible. However, its path becomes visible through a colloidal solution where the size of the particles is relatively larger. Why is the color of the clear sky blue? The molecules of air and other fine particles in the atmosphere have size smaller than the wavelength of visible light. These are more effective in scattering light of shorter wavelengths at the blue end than light of longer wavelengths at the red end. The red light has a wavelength at the blue end than light of longer wavelengths at the red end. The red light has a wavelength about 1.8 times greater than blue light. Thus, when sunlight passes through the atmosphere, the fine particles in air scatter the blue color more strongly than red. The scattered blue light enters our eyes. If the earth had no atmosphere, there would not have been any scattering. Then the sky would have looked dark. The sky appears dark to passengers flying at very high altitudes as scattering is not prominent at such heights.